No matter what you have to say about the guy, JKS is one of the hardest working Counter-Strike pros that the game has ever seen. Making his name known on Renegades, JKS has slogged through years of mediocre results, trying to foster an Australian Counter-Strike scene. But after moving to a talented, but ultimately scattered complexity roster, many wrote him off as a bright talent in a region not known for Counter-Strike, whose time in the spotlight has gone by. But JKS wasn't finished. During IEM Katowice 2022, FaZe's reign had to be sidelined for the playoffs due to COVID, and FaZe looked finished without their consistent anchor. But during the stand-in selection process, it would be Twist who would recommend that FaZe picks up JKS, who dominated in the tournament, and against G2 in the grand finals, JKS hit crucial clutches and helped FaZe lift the trophy. And for his efforts, he was rewarded with a spot against the very team he helped defeat, helping them rise to one of the best teams in the world. And now he's replaced by former G2, IGL, and Renegades teammate, Nexa. Talk about tragic. When news hit the Counter-Strike scene that Nexa was going to be replacing JKS of all people for G2's anchor, many were confused as to why. Nexa is not typically known for his anchoring, but rather his IGLing, and it's not as though G2's current IGL is in good standing with the CS fanbase. So that's what we're going to be looking into today in this video, to see if Nexa really does have the potential to fit into this G2 roster, and what their plans might be for the future. Let's get the elephant in the room out first, which is Nexa and Hooxi's potentially clashing IGLing. To demonstrate Nexa's IGLing and his role, I fellow CS YouTuber AGONOR to break down Nexa's current role in OG.
First of all, what is an anchor? Well, let's think you're a ship. To help a ship stay in the water, a ship uses something they like to call an anchor. And this is kind of the role in CS as well. You will be playing a site alone and holding the site down. And usually the most important rule for the anchor is to stay on their assigned site until you either spots the bomb or there's a call to rotate. Otherwise you have to stay. We will mainly focus on Nexa, but since he as well as the IGL, it's interesting to see how he uses his authority to help him in this role. OG are going for the classic 3-1-1 setup, with 3 players towards A, 1 in window and the last on B, and this is who we'll focus on. While NIP are taking middle and A ramp, and as the T you want this information, while you want to have the lurker being able to play around this information to get something done on B. And this is why Nexa for the first half of the round is just jump spotting car to try and spot a player, and this is what I would like to call an early warning net. We can see Nexa jumping to spot apps, and he has a smoke out, so if he sees a player, he can quickly smoke the player off and ask for rotations. Nexa jumps up and spots res. And let's now look at A. As the anchor, you will call one apps, smoke it off and wait, but OG are on a weaker buy, and this usually will force you to take some guesses, and since Nexa is the IGL, he can make these guesses. And when he spots his player, he instantly smokes him off and calls for rotation, and 2 players rotates over to help the captain. But look at the map. This is NIP having 3 players ready to take A site, but now only has 1 proper defender. And OG loses the round, due to having less A defenders since Nexa got 2 players from A over to B to help hold the empty site. Last one we broke down, we saw how Nexa's authority let him control the round as an anchor. But in this one, it's more fundamental focus on the Nexa side. After OG goes for an early mid control, they quickly gives it back, since if you will not take fully mid control with top mid with 4 players, it's better to get back to default. And here we need to skip until NIP are going for the execute. And here it's textbook from Nexa. He has 1 smoke ready to be thrown to keep NIP away from B. But here we play cards for spotting apps. While we can see NIP are ready for an A execute. And look at Nexa. Most unexperienced anchor would just rotate over as soon as the first kill comes in. But Nexa can't move away from site, since there is still time to go B for NIP. And here Nexa stays on site, and when Regali kills the bomb carrier, we can see that Nexa is struggling to leave site, and clears everything first, since if he dies here, he gives NIP the opportunity to go B site. And here he clears up properly, then short where he finds config, and on this kill and the time left, NIP has to go A, and Nexa can finally rotate off B. We saw in these 2 rounds, Nexa to succeed as an anchor need authority as an IGL, and in G2, they will still use Hooxi as the IGL, and this will create an interesting dynamic in the G2 team, now having 2 players needing the IGL authority to perform.
And that brings up 2 interesting questions for G2, which is Nexa good enough in the short term to replace JKS, and is he a better IGL for G2? Let's start with the former. Taking a look at the stats, both JKS and Nexa have practically identical stats in the last 3 months, which is what I'm calling recent performance, with the important caveats that JKS and G2 have generally been facing more difficult opponents, and that Nexa is an IGL. Looking at their AGL TV ratings in the last 3 months shows pretty consistent performances from both players. And judging by the eye test, they are both mechanically great players, although most people would give JKS the edge here since he's been putting up better stats on tougher competition in the last 3 months. Taking a look at the first match that Nexa played for G2, which really isn't fair considering he just rejoined the team. But even so, getting his first kill on Ancient after 11 rounds is not a favorable look for him. But despite the similarities, overall, most would say that JKS is the better anchor due to his accomplishments with G2, his willingness to take the less glamorous roles on T and CT side, and just for the simple fact that we are familiar with JKS in his role. But the real question is whether Nexa is going to become even better without the responsibilities of IGLing. The CS scene typically likes to joke about the IGL curse, and how even the best players struggle to keep up with their performances once they make their jump to being an IGL, before inevitably crawling back to their old role after realizing how difficult IGLing is. But it's actually very rare to see an IGL make a full transition to another role. Most of the time, if the team they're joining already has an IGL, they will play as a second IGL, either calling for one side or only calling on certain maps. And historically speaking, these teams almost never do well. If Nexa wants to make the jump to being a full-time rifler purely to fill JKS's role, then I do believe that he has the potential. However, due to the rarity of an IGL fully switching out of their role, I really don't think that Nexa is fully going to transition over. He certainly has the raw aim and mechanics to potentially do so, but I really don't think that Nexa wants to quit IGLing. So that begs the question, will G2 eventually replace Hooxi's IGLing with Nexa's? It's no secret that the general CS fan does not believe in Hooxi, and I think G2 is the most aware of that fact. Let's start with team chemistry. Obviously at the time of recording this, Hooxi is more familiar with Nico, Monesi, and Hunter than Nexa is in the last 2 years, but considering that Nexa has previously been an IGL for G2 for more than 2 years with Nico, and has played with Hunter for nearly 4 years, it becomes very easy to see how bringing back Nexa would be a breath of familiarity for the two superstars. I personally think Hooxi doesn't get enough credit for what he has done for G2, but with disappointing results in CS2, G2 might have felt pressure to make a big change, as well as to open up some money after matching Nico's contract with Falcons. G2 is incentivized to make a major reform to the roster. It's not impossible that G2 wants to replace both JKS and Hooxi as part of the roster reform, considering that they basically want to trade everybody, but they need to keep Hooxi as the IGL to help Nexa get back onto the team, before giving Hooxi the JKS treatment. Or maybe I'm just speculating way too far into this, who knows. But regardless of whether or not Hooxi gets traded, the question has to be asked, will G2 adopt a dual IGL system if they decide to keep Hooxi? I actually have enough faith that G2 could pull this off, because G2 has never been a super strat reliant team like Astralis, but dominated using highly talented individual play. Additionally, Hooxi and Nexa's IGLing style actually differs a lot. Hooxi tends to be a little bit more of an emotional hype man type like an Apex or Acadian, while Nexa tends to be a lot more composed.
Flashing, go, Justin, go.
Okay.
Flashing.
Hot top.
One max.
Vent rotating.
Back up the
Vent
last,
one.
last.
Nice.
Push
Pushing out. Wait, I kill. Back up. Come back.
It's hard, we can't.
Do you have any nades? Nice.
Dead.
Wait a bit now.
Bomb.
Yeah, we know. Fuck it. Just wait a bit, Fico. They are holding you and me, I think. I will go play.
I'm picking,
So-
normal.
Oh,
No.
I'll kill him.
This might sound like a bad thing, and it kind of is since their calls can conflict with each other, but it actually makes dealing with the mental game much easier because we all know how strong G2's mentals are. It's much easier to IGL a team when your team has full faith and respect into your plans, but if their mentals start to crack, it makes it way harder to get your stress through to them, which is why having another equally influential voice leading the team in another style could actually work. Maybe. Let me know what you guys think about the Nexa move down in the comments below. Will he be a better anchor than JKS, or is this a preemptive move for a much larger roster change? Thank you guys for watching, and make sure you check out AGONOR. He makes some great stuff on pro matches, and I'll see you guys very soon.